Alrighty, everyone. Hello, welcome back to Bald and Board Games. I'm Bald.
I'm bored.
And we are going to bring you a review of Ascendancy. No, we don't have the game in front of us because it's back at Board's Place, but there are tons of videos if you want to see what the game is in this playlist that this is going to be a part of. Yeah, so you can go and check those out.
Yeah, so on our YouTube channel, we have an unboxing months ago when we got the game.
Yep.
We did the tutorial scenario, and then we did all 8 scenarios. Played through them in, not necessarily in order, but in the order we were allowed to based on the game structure. So yeah, check those out on our YouTube. You'll see full playthroughs of all of them. The quick bullet point overview of what the game is you are a house. Similar Game of Thrones, and a bunch of other things where you control your house. You are doing different scenarios where your house is performing tasks, doing worker placement and some resource management, and completing whatever the objective of the game is in a certain amount of decades. Most of the time, it's loyalty points where we are competing against each other or together against a nemesis and trying to get the most loyalty points. So we're going to go through, talk about each of those aspects, talk about our typical 5 categories, and give an honest review. You'll see the box cover here, but if you want more in-depth information, definitely check out our videos, specifically our last one posted. We kind of give a little bit of feedback at the end with the game in front of us. But what are the categories?
So the way that our reviews work, if you haven't watched them beforehand, is we like to review games on potentially 6 different categories. But because this is not a straightforward campaign game with a story that has a through line, something like, Tainted Grail, Dragon Eclipse, things of that sort, we're only going to be doing 5 of them. So we're going to be doing gameplay, which of course is how the game plays, components, which is specifically the cards and how that material feels, the miniatures, the tiles, the board itself, how that feels, and kind of how deluxe or flimsy that stuff feels. Design, which is the look of the game, the artwork, the way the cards are laid out, that sort of visual design aspect. Then we're going to have the rulebook as well. So the rulebook, how was the rulebook written? Was it clear, easy to follow? Was there a rules reference card that came along with it that was easy to follow? Stuff of that sort. And then lastly, the storage. So how does the game store? Is it easy to take out, easy to put back? Is whatever we have there. And then after we each go over all 5 of those areas, we will give one final score for myself. We'll have a final score for board as well. And then we will take the average of each of our scores for those categories to get the bald and board specific score. And then finally, the bald and board score for the game, which will determine if this game is a bald and board certified must play or a bald and board certified don't play.
Yeah, and the basis of this review is on a 2-player game. So all 8 scenarios plus the tutorial we played is 2 players. And I got the equivalent of the all-in version, Platinum Edition, whatever it's called for this specific game. So there are certain components and things we'll talk about that only come with that version. Most of it's the map is the big piece, as well as I think the miniatures. I think a lot of the others are included in all versions.
Yep. And our grading scale, just so you know, is out of 5. So like 5 stars, that kind of idea. So if we say that something gets a 3, it's not a 3 out of 10, it's a 3 out of 5.
Yep.
Alrighty. So let's jump right in. We will start as we typically do in the box. So what did you give it for storage?
So, usually Nick's the harsh one here, and he might be harsher than me on this one. I don't know. I give this a 2.5.
Okay.
So the storage of this game, it's a big box. You've seen big box on our table, Isofarian Guard and others. Plenty of them do it well. This did not. So the storage in the box, I'm going to give this, there's 2 levels to storage here. Storage in the box and storage on the table for this game specifically. So storage in the box, everything's kind of just stacked up. It's a lot of rectangles, and they just say, hey, put these big ones on the bottom, stick some cards on the side, and then stick a bunch of other things in it, and it kind of fits in the end.
Yeah.
It doesn't really fit in the end because if you have the bigger version, again, the Platinum, all-in, whatever it's called, the mat that is actually the player board doesn't fold up nicely and fit in that box. The actual game board doesn't really fit in that box that well either with it. As well as they give you, I don't think that's here either.
It's up here, actually.
A dice tower.
We can show you that.
Super cool dice tower. That's me the main focus of our whole thing. The dice tower is super cool. Love it. We'll use this probably for some spooky games as the year goes by. But this does not fit in that box.
Nowhere to put it.
And if you disassemble it, you're not putting it together again.
No.
I'll rip. It would rip to shreds.
Oh
Probably.
yeah, it was. I almost bent pieces putting it together. So it's definitely gonna stay together.
Yeah.
But
So that is the in-the-game storage. Doesn't really fit that well. The board storage. So there's 4 phases. Each phase has its own storage tray. I was not a fan of this for some of them, specifically the Empire phase over here. It's just a bunch of cubes, but you don't use all the cubes every game.
Yeah.
I wish they would have given me separate storage with the cubes and said, okay, take cubes out of that storage to put into this tray to play the game. That happened in 2 of the phases, where now I just had to take a lid and stick a bunch of cubes in the lid, hopefully none of them dropping on the ground and eaten by Clove.
Clove's a dog.
Yeah. Where it was just kind of me thrown together. Like, oh, we just took these plastic trays, cut some holes in it. Everything fits. Whatever, it's fine.
Yeah.
So only a 2.5. I thought about going lower, but the cards did fit nicely into the storage tray, so it wasn't just one big rectangular tray. That would have been way worse. So I kind of count that 2.5.
Excuse my goodness. Yeah. I gave it a 2.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So around the same, all the same reasons to where, yes, it had storage things where things had their place, which is usually something that scores high for me. But when putting it in the box, no. Like, it was just literally just stacked on top of each other in an unorganized way. Again, having to shove things down the side of the box, so you're risking ruining those things. And then you can't have like a bunch of other things you kind of just pile on top and try to get the lid to close as much as possible. Too much of a puzzle to put back in there and risking things getting damaged. And I think the thing that ticked it down an additional 0.5% was the storage of the actual character boards. The lids do not go on tightly. If you tilt those any kind of way, components are coming out of there.
Yeah.
Like, we had to figure out a way to keep things in there by like putting stuff under things and then putting the lid on and being very careful trying to put it in. It's just very unorganized, very easy for things to fall out, get jumbled, messed up, during the game. Exactly. The cubes, like, they had spots, but they were hard to get out of those spots. In addition to putting them away, there was some where there was like one extra cube that didn't even have a spot. You just kind of put on the board somewhere. And it wasn't like a Lacerda game where every component has an extra one just in case you lose them. Like, no, it's like specifically this one cube had an additional one.
Yeah. And we didn't know until a few games in that it wasn't needed.
Right. It's so a lot of things like that are very annoying that risk you ruining your game. And that's really why storage is important, to get it onto the table easily, put it away easily, and make sure things are safe when you're not playing it. So got a 2 from me.
Yeah. So next category up, similar as walking through a game, is the rulebook. So for this game, there's 3 parts of the rulebooks, which I'm sure Nick will cover in his review. But this will be, did the rulebook cover what it needed to cover, or is there pieces missing?
Yep. I was really harsh on this rulebook, and I didn't think I was going to be when we finished playing.
Right.
I actually gave the rulebook a 1. So when looking at the rulebook, you may think that that's weird because it's thick. So you would think, oh, it's got to cover everything. It does.
Like 112 pages.
But I realized it's so big, it's hard to reference. And there's still parts that were vague in there that we couldn't find. It's like digging through, I don't even know. It's looking through a textbook for one date, essentially. And it's not user friendly at all. And so I dropped it down to a 1 because that rulebook actually made it harder to play. You had to first read those 112 pages to even get into the game. In addition to that rulebook, you had the tutorial scenario book that you went through first. And really, that tutorial scenario book should teach you everything you need to play going forward. This rulebook was so confusing to use that we didn't battle creatures correctly until the second to last scenario that we played, because it either wasn't clear enough when we read it the first time, or we just read so much information that we completely looked over it. But there was a lot of times we went back to that rulebook because of scenarios we encountered that weren't referenced in the rulebook. There's ways we broke the game, which I'm sure we'll mention in the gameplay, but you can put as many pretty pictures as you want in the book to explain what you're saying, but if it's overall confusing to begin with, then you're gonna get a low score here. And the game isn't that confusing. It probably could have been half the size and been more clear. So unfortunately, it did get a 1 for me.
For me, I gave this a 3. So middle of the road. So I'll go through each piece separately. So the rule book itself. So the first rule book, the 112 whatever pages, that goes through everything about the game. To Nick's point, there is so much in there.
Yeah.
I happen to have it most of the time, and I kind of memorize certain pages to be like, oh, the nemesis are on page 72. So there's certain sections you can kind of remember to go back to. But in a lot of games we play where battle is an important part of the game, battle should be a thick multiple pages with examples. This is how a battle works, end to end. This did not have that. This went super in depth on each location of the 4 phases, went super in depth on all of the cards that you can get and all of the tiles and explanations on them. Battle was super vague. It told you, oh, a battle would happen in this scenario, but to Nick's point, we literally didn't know the difference between attacks and tactics and how to use them until 7 out of 9 scenarios in. So that was a big deficit of mine. The scenario booklet, the first 30-something pages is the tutorial. But again, you're not going to really reference that later in the game. The rest were just, here's the scenario at hand. What I didn't like about those was they were so simple. There was only, I think, 2 or 3 of the 8 had a backstory of why are we in this scenario. The rest are just like, hey, you're at the trial of the kings. We don't know why, but you're here. Additionally, there was certain setup for those scenarios, which is good. I'm glad they gave the clarification, but all of them weren't super clear. We had one towards the end where the nemesis could increase their structure up to a tier 3, and it said every time this happens, put them at a tier 3. Well, they only have 1 tier 3 available. So it wasn't like, oh, I can't put more than 1 tier 3. That is, do I move the tier 3? Like, so it didn't clarify any of that. Every time it gave specific to scenario rules, it just gave you like 4 bullet points. It said, and 2 of the 4 bullet points were always the same on what side of the map to use and how many cards to get at the end. The only thing that gave it a boost and held it at that 3 mark is the player aid. They gave you a nice front and back. It was actually a decent quality player aid where, as a player, I knew every phase exactly what I could do. Yes, there was still some vagueness and question on some of the stuff, but it was very clear, not only on the player aid, but also on the locations for some of it, on how you put your characters in, what you get if you put a higher level character and oust someone else. So I did love that, so that's what kind of boosted and held it at that 3. So
something else, like, so talking about the scenario book, something else that later on we didn't really find out about
points of interest
were the points of interest, and when those came up and what that was and like how that even worked, really, like the dialogue, we barely touched that because we didn't really know about it, which is unfortunate because that's where the story was.
Yeah, we found out. So the game is meant to be played over and over again. It does say that, I think, right at the beginning, to say, oh, if you do this one scenario where you have a ledger of achievements, go back and do the scenario again to try to get the other achievements. So you're supposed to play it multiple times. And I guess this Twisted Spintress and the Mad Vizier, you could do multiple times and do the points of interest. But 2 of the 6 bosses, nemesis bosses, could only be unlocked through the points of interest. So you really have to play over and over and over again and perfectly choose your own adventure path to get there.
Which, and again, we'll get to this in the gameplay, may not even be possible.
You're right.
I think for the rulebook, just the last thing to say, what I think they messed up on in my book, no pun intended, is most games that are heavy like this have the rulebook. Here, so they have the tutorial book, then they have the rulebook, and then they have the expanded, like, other things that you should know if you want to dive deeper or need to. So that main rulebook is that thing you reference for those quick things. They make it very clear how you battle this and that, all those important things you need to know. That expanded book is where it gives you more specifics on specific topics, and it's indexed and very clear to jump into one specific spot. So it saves you from having to find it in this giant book. So I think that even separating that would probably help us out.
Yeah.
So, all right. Design.
All right. What is design?
What is design? Again, so design is the look of the game. So the artwork, the design of the cards, the layout of the cards, the layout on for this one specifically, those 4 areas where you can do actions, all of that. That is the design.
Yeah. So my design score for this is a flat 2. So I'm gonna be the harshest in this category because I suck at English, and I caught a lot of these issues. They either did not play test this game very well at all, or they just swept over a lot of things and play tested certain aspects and not others. Because there is a lot of scenarios in this game with things that don't match up. So, for example, if you watch any of the videos, I was the greenhouse, House Khan, I think my name was. No, you were House Khan. I was House something else. It doesn't matter. I was
House Khan.
Yeah, Rose. I had a character called the Hunter, or the Huntress.
Mm-hmm.
It was called the Huntress. I can bring out my champion called the Huntress. On the game board, on the tiles, certain tiles have certain champion names. On the tile, it's called the Hunter, which, okay, Hunter, Huntress, not that big of a difference. There was multiple others like that, where whatever was written on the tile on the game board did not match the actual characters, which multiple times we're looking at cards and we're like, where's this card? So that was a big dock on design for me, that you did not play test it well. It was not just compared side by side. All you gotta do is lay out all of the character champion cards, lay out the tiles, and make sure they matched, and that wasn't done.
Yep.
A lot of the other things with design was, and I'll put this in design and gameplay, is how much space this game took up. This game, we have a large table. This game took up the entirety of the gray mat that you see on this table. And sure, you have the table map, you have an area to battle creatures and your champions. We only played as a 2-player game. If this was a 4-player game, we would need a full extension on a 6-foot table.
They would need to be able to sit on the
edges. Sure.
Like
yeah. So there's no way for everyone to see everything.
Yeah.
There was just so many pieces on how they set up the phases that it was everywhere. And every time we set it up, it took us a good multiple minutes to get things adjusted and in place.
With the cards, if you go top to bottom and side to side, the player boards were about 1.5 feet by 1.5 feet of space that you needed.
Yeah. So that's my last comment on design. The player board.
Yeah.
The player boards were not designed well. Where as you unlock certain things, you have a little area, probably about this large, and you slide up, and you can put cubes in as you unlock things. Great. The cubes are fine. They fit in perfectly. But I unlock cards now. There's nowhere for me to put those cards.
Yeah.
So if I unlock an ability because I upgrade my empire or constructed something, I now either have to sort through these and try to memorize every one I have unlocked, or I need to lay things out. It's already crowded enough. I don't want to lay more cards out on the table.
Yep.
So that really docked design where... And I'll throw this caveat out there, that they didn't want to build this game. So the people created Ascendancy literally after we all purchased it for hundreds of dollars, said, this really wasn't the game we wanted to make. We just wanted to get something out there. We're making this other game called Ascendancy Underworld. That's the game we wanted. Which kind of puts a bad taste in everyone's mouth because we don't know what the cost of that game is going to be, if it's an expansion or it's a brand new game. But why produce a game that you didn't want to produce?
Yeah.
Just wait another year and produce the correct game.
Well, especially if there's going to be errors. It's like don't rush to get something out. First impressions matter.
Yeah.
You know.
So design for me really killed it.
Yeah. I gave design a 3. So
higher than me. Wow.
For a lot of the same reasons as you, one of the ones that you didn't mention that kept getting me was the misprint on all the item cards.
Oh,
half the item cards had the wrong image on them for the type of material they were. It would say metal, but it would show glass. And for something that is very iconography heavy, you can't mess that up whatsoever. So that was an additional thing on top of everything that you mentioned. The thing that kept it 1 point higher for me was the artwork. Is that artwork wise, it was gorgeous. Like they took the time to put in the artwork, to design each tile to look like its own space. The actual tiles, those hexes for the locations, those are clear to read. You go there. This is how many points you get for putting settlement on there and the different levels. And then this is the addition or subtraction based on what's around it. And then if you're adventuring, here's your skill check test. Super clear. Amazing. So visually there, those were great. That's clearly where most of the effort went to. And then the artwork for the characters and the enemies, all of that was great. But it's those little things that involve the actual gameplay that you mentioned that really fell through. And that definitely kept it at that 3 for me. I do really like the upgrading the civilizations, sliding stuff up, unlocking those areas to put things down. But again, design-wise, confusing for one, because we didn't even know we messed that up the first game. We went all the way, but yeah, you have no place to put those cards. Like you kind of got to figure out a way, where to put those. So that was So 3 for me on design.
And I have one more card for design. I was going to put in components, but it actually fits in design better. Is we have the miniatures, and I'll talk about the exact miniatures and components. But what bothered me is I had the miniature for the archer. It looked cool. Perfectly fine. I have 3 characters, 1 miniature. There was not a way for me to have all 3 miniatures out, or there wasn't even all 3 miniatures existing. But why, if you're going to create miniatures, why not just create all 3 for each house? It's only 12 miniatures. The box had like 30 in it. I don't even know what the rest were used for.
That's my comment in components is about that.
Yeah, I don't even know where we used a few Nemesis ones, and we used 1 of each of ours. I don't even know what the rest were for. But for design there, it's like if you're going to design a miniature for a character, you have 3 characters, just design them all. And like give us an option to do it, or be like, hey, have 1 miniature here. If you have that champion out, put the miniature on the champion.
Or have 1 miniature that includes all 3 champions on it.
That too, yeah. But all right. So next up though, components. So components is the physical components themselves. So the miniature, the dice tower, all of the phases, all the pieces in there, as well as the map and the tiles.
Yeah. So for components, this also got a 3 from me. So the miniatures, we'll start there because you're talking about it. The miniatures that we have, those look great. Like they were designed very well. They look very cool. But yeah, like half of them to 2/3 of them you don't use. And so it's because you're using avatars of your characters in this world. So I think for each house there's like 2, but not 3 for some reason.
Yeah.
It's like I had 2 I could choose from. 1 was clearly the barbarian and 1 was clearly the guy who's on my board. It's like, if you're not going to do all of them, then do the person who's the main artwork on your board, at least. But then they also had these like enhanced settlements that are on there, which we never used. It's like, but where would you put those? Do they go on your initial space where you start, I assume? And like,
they had enhanced settlements in there?
Yeah, they had 3 tiers, but like it was like, where do you put them? Are they where your embarkment? Is that where you start? You use those and you like upgrade. That's the only one that can be upgraded to tier 3. Because it has the 3 parts for that specifically. So a lot of confusion with those miniatures. So it's like either do it, like everything else, either do it all or do it a very specific amount or just don't at all. Like if it's too expensive to do miniatures, do the acrylic standee thing. You have amazing artwork. You could have done acrylic standees for each one. So it's like, oh, I want to play as this person. Instead
we have standees.
And do
they
that.
They gave those.
Yeah, but still, they still only had like the 2 characters though, like the same number as.
No, they had all 3.
Did they?
That was the only one they provided all 3 was the acrylics.
Then don't do miniatures.
Yeah.
If you're gonna do standees and you can't do all the miniatures, don't do miniatures. That was a gripe for me. For the hex tiles, those are very solid, cardboard, easy to shuffle, put out. Those I have no issue with. For the gameplay mat and the board, very, the board solid as well. The mat, was very, I mean, it's a mat. It's hard to mess up a neoprene mat, but people do. So that was great. For the trays for gameplay, I do like that those had their very clear, specific spots where you put things and stuff, and it didn't feel flimsy at all. Those were also great. I have a problem, of course, with the player board, like we mentioned as well. Sharp edges, but
It didn't have big points.
it's just like that was kind of weird. But then just like the way that the size of it was too big, too cumbersome, but also too small for what they're trying to do. If that makes sense. You know, I feel like if they turned it sideways and you advanced your stuff this way, you would have had more room to move those cards and like put them boom, boom, boom. Or limit it. Say, okay, when you upgrade your settlement, you have to choose which one is your active enhancement.
Yeah.
Or something like that. Yeah, so it's stuck in the middle of the road of the 3 for me. Some good, some bad. Yeah.
Mine held slightly lower to 2.5. A lot of the same reasons, so I won't like harp on them. So I love the mat, love the tiles, love the minis. Again, don't know why we have so many, but I love the actual minis themselves as the component. In terms of the cards were a decent material. Yeah, they're decent. They shuffled well because you had to keep shuffling them. The only thing I don't like about how they, and this is I guess slightly storage, is you got to keep taking them out, especially with the Nemesis. And so it was like they were a little tight in some of the areas. So it might have been easier to even extend. I don't want you to enhance the storage. There's already too much. But maybe make the cards a little smaller or something.
Well, I will jump in just on your topic of that real quick. Something I do like about the storage for the cards is they had the cards on a slightly raised platform, so I just pushed down a side so it came up.
True.
But it was still too tight to really get in there and grab them at that point. You kind of had to like hit them and grab them real quick.
Yeah. The few things that made it a deficit is number one, the cubes. They did choose colors for each of the different things, but they were just very simple colored cubes. 4 in the Empire phase, 2 over there. At least like for the Mana Stone, you had a symbol for what Mana Stone meant. You could have put that symbol on the cube or on 2 sides of the cube to make it, when you see it on my player board, like, oh, that's a Mana Stone. Cool. The food, you could have put a picture of some food or something on those. If you're already putting all this effort into the artwork and everything else, it wouldn't have been that much more to do that little step to make the cubes look personalized. Similar to other review videos we've had, where make it look like your game.
Yep.
This looked like you went to Michael's and bought some cubes.
Like a game crafter website.
Yeah. In terms of the other components, just going through the final phase over there had little status markers. Those were good. Again, they were a little solid, so you could easily bounce them around without worrying about them scuffing up or ripping.
Yep.
But 2.5, again, really bothered me with some of the same stuff Nick mentioned, where they could have done significantly better.
All right, everyone. The pièce de résistance. Said that wrong. Don't care.
Yeah,
Gameplay.
We're American. This is an English channel.
What did you give gameplay?
Gameplay for Ascendancy. I gave a 3.5. I know this will be higher than Nick, so I'm going to let him gripe on the griping things.
I'll be on the grapevine.
So, some of the good things.
I do.
So some of the good things, scenarios were interesting. Sure, as we talked about, they didn't give us a bunch of information about them, but they were kind of fun. They were different. It wasn't like you were playing the same thing over and over and over again. Yep. You had some differences on the map. Things shuffle really well, so the variance on how the tiles get laid out was enjoyable. I enjoy the fact that there was kind of 4 phases where you had to take kind of a whole strategic approach where you can only use certain people in certain phases or oust others depending on the leveling. So you got to work with that, but also you can kind of strategically be like, oh, I want to focus on resources in this turn and ignore the other stuff. So I did like that gameplay aspect where you had to think ahead or see what your opponent was doing and hopefully do something to counter them or take a different approach. I enjoyed that there was little quest cards and different paths on my player board to try to work up. So it wasn't every game, oh, I have to build this, build that. It was I could choose. I could focus on the Empire, focus on building, focus on just getting loyalty points by getting different quest cards or things like that, fighting creatures. So I did like all of that. Some of the negatives I'll hit. Number one, the Nemesis structure is broken in this game.
Yeah.
I know it's probably on your list as well. Where on the game board you can play with one or two Nemesises.
Nemesis.
Yeah. Depending on
Nemesis.
what scenario you're doing and how many people you have playing. There's multiple scenarios. If you follow the rulebook verbatim and exactly how a Nemesis can act and what they do, there's multiple scenarios on either A, the Nemesis will get stranded in a corner and can never move again. B, a Nemesis will just murder you real quick. Or C, the Nemesis and some are just kind of useless. Or they're just overpowered, where you can get scenarios where the Nemesis gets to, let's say, 20 loyalty points. If you're playing a hard with two players, that means they have over 40 health in the final battle.
Yep.
And we can only have two characters each that have like 3 to 5 health. Sure, there's things we can do to help us, but there's a lot going on that you have to focus mid-game. You get to the final boss fight, and it's hard.
Yep.
So it seems like the Nemesis are very broken in this game. Again, I already commented that this wasn't the game they wanted to build, so that definitely got put in the score to be like, well, why are you giving me this if this wasn't what you wanted?
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what it was.
I gave gameplay a 2.
As expected.
Yeah. For everything that you said. So yeah, so the Nemesis, we literally got it stuck in a corner, I think in our last game.
Which was great because it was a co-op.
Right, it couldn't move, but that's not fun.
No.
2 games, it just happened to beeline and take me out right away, which also isn't fun because that's entirely based on luck, how the die rolls and how it pushes, but like there's nothing I could do. Like I even in one of the games leveled up my settlement, assuming that that was gonna happen to me for whatever reason. It did, and it's not like it takes down one notch of your settlement. No, it just takes out the entire thing. When you're playing hard, it takes out 2 levels. Boom, boom. It's like, come on. And then I'm sitting out of the game. Like, I'm done. And I don't mind a game where when you lose or get taken out, you sit out if the game plays relatively quickly or if it's difficult for that to happen. But in those scenarios, it happens so fast. I sat here for like 30 to 45 minutes doing nothing.
That happened 2 out of 7 times.
And that's a 2-player game. In a 4-player game, that probably would have been close to an hour to an hour and a half at least.
Easily, yeah. That
I was sitting around doing nothing because the Nemesis happened to go for me. Just ridiculous. The luck kills the fun. Like it's too skewed in that way, and there's nothing that I could really do to prevent it. To the point where, like, in one of the games where it happened, I constantly just staying where I was at because, like, okay, do I leave or do I not?
But then it says the Nemesis just fights you, and if the Nemesis beats you in a fight and you die, you're just also dead and you're gone.
Exactly. So literally nothing you can do. So just ridiculous there. There was one scenario where I had to get a certain number of my people out on the board. Okay, that was my goal for this scenario. It wasn't like it was a quest card that I had that could have happened in any other scenario. No, it was a goal for this specific scenario. That scenario, if you play with the largest amount of time, adds 2 what are called sacrifice cards into the top 6 cards of the event deck, which means you are guaranteed to pull both of those, which means that objective I had for that scenario was impossible.
So I found it's at 98%. The only way I figured out, I was thinking about it, if you get your cunning up ridiculously fast to 4, you get the plot ability where you can take the top card and throw it to the bottom. That's the only way, though.
But my cunning starts at 0.
No, I know. I'm just saying it's the only way. That I thought through it. I'm like, there's got to be some way. But it's so hard.
It's ridiculous. Like it's just insane. So the only way around that, play a shorter game. But it's like you shouldn't have to play a shorter game. And that's my other thing too. Is like they give you options of playing 3 rounds, 6 rounds, or 9 rounds.
Well, 3-2. You don't have to pick. You just pick between 3 to 9.
I know. Oh, sorry.
So between 3 to
9. Like I get the idea of wanting people to be able to choose how long their game plays. Make it the same number of rounds and just change the variables within the rounds potentially. Or if you're going to make it a greater number of rounds, like that's a big jump. Like if you do 3 rounds, that's too small. You can't do anything.
Oh yeah.
3 rounds, boom, boom, boom. Like how is that even an option? 9 rounds is really long. Like if you want more of like I'm chilling, I'm gonna slowly build up my stuff and yada yada, cool. But again, if somebody dies right away, 9 rounds is ridiculous.
We also saw our very first game we played 9 rounds. The very first scenario, which would have been Loyalty to the People, we played 9 rounds. Both of us not only got our Empire to tier 4, we earned probably 30 renowned over the Empire max, and you don't get that renowned. You can get to 20 and you're done.
Yeah.
So it's like 9 rounds is so large of a time period that you can almost do everything. And now it's just almost not fun because like I don't want to be able to do everything.
No, so we found definitely like 6 rounds is that kind of sweet spot. I would probably even put it maybe at 7 for one more turn, but it's also okay to finish wanting one more turn because you have to really decide what you're going to do, choose a track, and go that way. So I think that option is ridiculous. I think instead, based on the scenario you're playing, since this scenario game, the scenario has this number of rounds for normal gameplay. It has this number of rounds for hard gameplay.
That makes sense.
The Nemesis doesn't change based on if it's normal or hard. They stay the same as they are. What makes it difficult is, okay, now you have to achieve these objectives in less time. So now you have to really try to, get things moving. What I did like is I do like the worker placement aspect of the game. I like having to assign your little people to their areas, and only specific ones can go to specific zones in a hierarchy, but you can use the higher people on the lower ones. So you can make that choice of, okay, like, so when we're playing with Nemesis, like I'm going there, okay, the Nemesis bumps me out. I could then choose to place my higher people there. It's like, I really need to do that. So I don't need to do anything in here. So I'm going to put him there, bump him out.
Yeah.
I did like that. I do like the ease of how the Nemesis has its little automated movement and everything. I think that was great. I like that the scenarios each had their own kind of objective to them, but I do wish they had more depth to them as well. I wish that there was some where you had just different levels. Which honestly, I think the biggest thing I don't like about this is the settlement thing, because that I think is the weak point. That is where the Nemesis can take someone out of the game entirely, or a player could take someone out of the game entirely in that moment. I think it's the weakest.
Or it makes them the crown almost guaranteed instantly.
Exactly. Like, it's just, that is the most broken part of this game. This game would almost be more fun if it was just exploring to an area, doing your skill check, and if you have something to put down on a space, like, you can, but then it doesn't get removed. Like, it goes down to get you points in some way. I like that your Empire stack upgrades based on you, like, taking out monsters and doing quests and getting that sort of thing in that regard. And that's how that upgrades kind of autonomously as you do more. That was really nice. I do like the skill tracks underneath each area. That felt really cool. And I do like how you can unlock cards based on those legacy cards, based on doing things. What I don't like about the legacy cards is that those dictate what scenarios you can play.
Yeah.
I don't like that you have to unlock scenarios in that way, to where the legacy cards are randomly dealt out. And if you don't have any of those legacy scenarios in there, tough titty.
Because you're told to replay the scenario again.
Replay the same one. Like, no, I don't want to do that. Like, I just got done doing that. And it took this long to get through it. Have the scenarios unlock in successive order. Beat this one to go on to number 2.
Yeah.
Beat this one to go on to this one. Or have a branching path, to where maybe you go from 1 to 2, and then 2 you can choose 3 or 4. Yeah. And then based on that, you can go from 3 down to, or whatever it is, like some sort of like treat like that. So yeah, anyway, very long-winded. Gameplay gets a 2 for me. All right. So our final averaged score individually. So we take each score that we gave from, gameplay, component, design, rulebook, storage, get an average for that. That'll be the Bald's final score, the board's final score, and then we will get the official Bald and Board final scores for each categories in the ultimate score, which will tell us if Ascendancy is a Bald and Board Games must play or a Bald and Board Games don't play. To be a must play, it must get a 3 at least
in the combined score.
in the combined score. Anything below that is a don't play. When it comes to averaging scores, we round down to the nearest half of to the nearest half. So if your score is a 4.7, it's a 4.5. We do not round up. We round down to keep it fair. Didn't reach that tier, it doesn't deserve to be there.
Yep.
Okay. So
what is your final score?
My final score after everything is a 2. This game feels rushed. They said it was rushed. It's exactly what you have here. A rushed game that is fun sometimes, but oftentimes it's frustrating on top of being frustrating trying to get onto the table. And that's not good.
Yeah, my final score across all 5 categories is a 2.5. Again, a bunch of similar comments. It 100% feels rushed and is rushed. I don't think we would ever get this on the table with friends. Again, the setup takes too long. It takes too much space. Like 98% of families with their kitchen table not fin this game comfortably. Sure, we laid it out the way they were told us to lay it out. We could have laid it out differently, but for the camera view, we did the way that was supposed to be done.
Which is still this entire map.
But a few other things I didn't really comment in gameplay, but I just thought of is I do like how you can buy things in different phases. So I could be in phase 3 over there, but I can buy food over here if I have the coin to do so. But that wasn't true for all areas. So like the quest cards, you can never buy a quest card. You had to go to the quest. Well, 80% of the time I go to quest, the nemesis would knock me out. And it's like, okay, the only way I can override the nemesis in quest is not only take my high-level person. That's not good enough. I have to do a bunch of things to get a better person than my highest person. From the Lord to the Royal, loyalty, or whatever the Royal something, Royal Guard, or whatever it was called. And then do that. So now I have to focus on that. So if you're playing with 2 hard nemesis, it's almost impossible to counter both of them in the higher phases.
It would have made sense for this. So they have your upgrading where it costs 2 ore. Why didn't quest cost 2 knowledge?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you had 2 ore costs for upgrading and for settlements. You had items you can pay coins for. You had creatures where, I didn't get a creature here. Well, I can conquer over there and get a creature. Cool. You had the different things where you can invest money, you can do the patron actions to flip little tiles and a bunch of other stuff. But at least in the 2 houses we played, there was no way to get those quest cards. I think it was the only one, really. Hirelings you could buy, everything else you could buy. It was just quest cards. Where if you're trying to increase your empire, you need renown. The only way to get renowned, quest cards, winning in battle against creatures, and having both your intellect and your strength at 4 by getting the 9.
And like 1 loot token, I think.
Oh yeah, there's 1 loot token, gives like 2. That's it.
Yep.
And that's purely random. Of where that loot token might even be in the game, depending on how it gets shuffled.
Yep.
So it's so hard to focus on getting the empire up unless you just focus purely on creature battling. Or the nemesis is really just going to block you everywhere. So again, 2.5. I overall probably won't back the Underworld unless it's under $100. If they bring out another $300 game, plus shipping costs on how big that box is, because it looks
especially now.
Yeah, it looks like they're developing a whole new game because they're supposed to have a whole new dungeon set of tiles and a whole new structure on how everything works. So I'm assuming almost everything in the box I have is useless.
Yeah.
So probably won't back the new game. And that's sad because the new game looks cool, but you made me pay $300 for a rushed product that sucked for 8-9 scenarios that we played over 2-3 hours each.
Yeah.
So it's a waste of our Saturdays.
We got to spend time together.
That's not good enough.
All right, everyone. So now we're going to give you the bulletin board official ratings for each of the categories and then the final score, which you can already see what's coming. So we'll start with the box again. So for storage, the bulletin board game official score is a 2. We had the same points.
Yeah.
You had things to put things in, but then you might as well have been putting all that into a random box.
Pretty much.
Yeah. For the rulebook, our combined score, while our scores differed a good amount, came out at a 2. as well for the average. So I think in general we had the same gripes. With that is it's too dense. Like refine, organize,
What did you
double
give the
check your
Rulebook?
stuff. A 1.
You didn't do this math right. 1 and 2.5. It's
You
three
gave
and
it
a half.
no. You gave it a 3 for Rulebook.
Oh, I did.
Yeah.
That's that category. I wrote them in different
Sir.
orders. 'Cause when I wrote down here,
Yeah.
the order is different than what we went through.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, what? Okay,
So
my bad.
for design, our combined average for ball and board is 2.5. I gave it a 3. You gave it a 2. Design wise, again, looked pretty, but when you look closer, looks shitty.
There's a t-shirt, lame.
There you go.
You look pretty, but deep down you look shitty.
And fireworks going off outside randomly. So then for components, I gave it a 3. You gave it a 2.5. So the overall comes to 2.5 for components. A lot of that leaned on the random, kind of the missing minis, that sort of thing was weird. And yeah, just like some of the just general design of the components or missing components, I guess, just didn't even, or
the simplicity
additional
of the
components.
cubes, yeah.
Like just did not hit well for what they're trying to do. Then lastly, we have gameplay. I gave it a 2. You gave it a 3.5. Comes out to an average of 2.5. So again, looks fun. Starts off potentially being fun. The longer you play it, the less fun it is, which is not how a game should be.
Yeah.
At all. Especially one where they want you to play it again and again to unlock things. That's not going to happen. So overall, the Bald and Board Games official score for Ascendancy is a 2, which makes Ascendancy our first official Bald and Board Games
Don't play.
We did the hard work for you. It is unfortunate that it did score this low. We don't want to give out a score this low, but if we can help you save a good chunk of change, if Matthew Meeple, the designer of the game, sees this in any kind of way via the Instagram post or the video, hopefully the candid feedback can help make whatever's coming next even better. And for those of you who play the next one, it most likely won't be us, at least not right away. I hope it is better. I hope that it is the game that they want to make and that they wanted this initial one to be. I think lesson learned, including for us as we design our own games, is do not put out a product that is not what you intend it to be. Hold off and just put your best foot forward, whatever it is.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. All right, everyone. That was a review of Ascendancy. We hope you enjoyed the candid feedback. That's what we like to do here. That's why we do the 5-score rating system. So it's not entirely biased on one thing that we didn't like. It comes out as even keeled as possible, and then between us as well. So thank you for joining us here as we gave a review of Ascendancy. I'm Bald.
I'm bored.
We will not see you in Ascendancy.